Good day and welcome to another edition of One-on-One with Swope Health. I'm your host, Eric Wesson. Congratulations to Swope Health for providing 17 locations for all of your health needs here in the Kansas City metropolitan area. If you have a health concern, health need, let them be the one to help you. My guest today is none other than Ruth Ramsey, and she is the publisher of Our Health Matters and a community leader for years. Ruth, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Eric, for having me.
So you're from Kansas City.
I am a native Kansas Citian. I was born in at the old General Hospital number 2. Have you heard that story? Are you from Kansas City?
Born and raised,
Okay.
yes. General Hospital
General
number
Hospital
2.
number 2.
I've heard about. So tell us, you were born there, and
Right. My family all hails from Mississippi. Most of my dad and mom's family moved to Kansas City many years ago. So I was born here in Kansas City, but Mississippi is where my roots are, family roots are. So Southern family, Southern lifestyle, religious, and very strong family background.
okay. And so went to Central High School.
Central High School, yeah, one of the best schools in Kansas City.
Okay. Okay, that's a good thing. And married, kids.
I've been married. I married early, divorced early. Then I had a second marriage later on in my life. My husband passed away 5 years ago. But I raised my 2 sons as a single parent. And during those years in the 60s, raising children, wanting to make sure my children had a good education, a good home life, that they were raised properly, I spent a lot of time making sure that I could do that for them.
Okay, that's good. And your son?
I have 2 sons, one George, who lives in Texas, and one that's Walter, lives here in Kansas City.
Okay. Grandkids?
One granddaughter.
One granddaughter. Okay, I bet she's spoiled.
Oh, yeah, she is.
And so your labor of love for 17 years has been Our Health Matters.
17 years of my, let's say almost 30 years. My primary business is graphic design, advertising, and promotional product distributor. I've basically done that business for close to almost 30 years now.
Really?
And then 17 years of that period of time, I published Our Health Matters.
And so people that see Our Health Matters and know of you don't know this one secret about you, that you were one of the first, if not the first, Black woman graphic art designer in the area to go to the level that you've gone.
You know, it's...
You're a pioneer.
I think so, to some degree, perhaps. But yeah, at the time I started, there were probably no graphic design firms such as I was at that time, ran by a female Black. There was one that was established by, I think, African-American male person.
Mm-hmm. So what made you get into graphic art?
Well, because I had been in the field for a while and I wanted to strike out on my own. And so with the knowledge and background that I have and the expertise in managing and directing graphic design services, I sought out clients, and they were very acceptable of my work. And I've always prided myself on quality services, you know, making sure that the client is treated with the highest respect, and that I listen to them and that I do what I can to accomplish their goals. And
so Our Health Matters came about as what need? What did you feel was needed?
In 2004 is where that idea first evolved in my thinking. Sort of came to me, and I was like, what can I do that would be an impactful thing, that would be beneficial to the community, but also something that would be a natural fit for my business? And it's like this still small words whispered in my ear: publish a magazine, publish a health magazine. And as it came to me so clearly that day when it occurred, and I thought about it, and I said, there's got to be a bunch of health magazines out there in the community. So what I set out to do, I went around the community just looking to see if there was a publication that would be accessible, available, meaning that you didn't have to pay for it. I looked at all the outlets where a free publication would be placed, and there was none. There was no health magazine. I also knew that the publication I wanted to design needed to engage African Americans. Not that it would be only for minority populations or African Americans, but I wanted to attract your attention. I knew as an African American that there are certain topics and ways that you reach us and you engage us. So when we see ourselves being shared in media or exposed in media in various topics, we pay attention. I think it's been proven that, and I think you probably in the last 50 years, I think advertisers realized that they needed to show African American people in some of their commercials, right?
Right.
And so, but again, in our magazine, when I did look around the community, I didn't see any publications speaking to us. We were not included. And I wanted to be inclusive. And in fact, I wanted our Health Matters to be inclusive of ethnically diverse and racially diverse audiences. And so, but I did not also, I wanted to highlight chronic conditions. African Americans are always at the top of the list of most of the chronic diseases. And again, I wanted to share what those chronic conditions are, what we need to do about it, where we need to go to seek help for it. And so I wanted it to be a tool of resource. You know, I don't want to just say, here's what heart disease is, here's what diabetes is. I wanted to also extend that to in the sense that here's where you can go to get help for this condition, or here's where you get more information. So many times, as I said, in our community, there are people who are in health services, but they're not really speaking to the audiences that need to hear it, and they're not positioning themselves in a way that we feel that we are accepted, you know, that they want us or welcome us and to receive those services. So it makes a difference.
When you think of health concerns, and you brought up a very key issue that we hear about, but we don't really think about it, and that is what is the most dangerous? Because you said we're always at the top of the list. What is the most dangerous or the most kind of eyebrow-raising health concerns that we face in the Black community?
Well, certainly heart disease, diabetes, stroke is very often. African American populations have the high incidences of stroke and heart disease. The men have the highest numbers as it relates to prostate cancer. You know, so, and high blood pressure. I think ever since, even before I did the publication, I'd always heard about high blood pressure or hypertension. Hypertension, it appears that we're almost predisposed to have that particular condition, but those of us who know our family members and we know folk, I bet if you were asked 10 people in a room of 50 how many have high blood pressure, you'll probably have more than half of those people in there that say they have it and are getting care for it. You know, they're getting the types of medication they need to control it. People don't understand all the time, how do I control it? What else can I do outside of taking medicine? And so a medical doctor, provider should always share with that patient, yes, here's the medicine, but you also need to do these other things. And perhaps sometimes they don't always do that. And so our Health Matters, I feel that we are a resource. You know, we're that additional resource in the community, along with doctors and providers and people that are providing care, to help get that word into the community and directly into the homes of families, whether they're Black or white or otherwise.
Because one of the things that we always hear about is diet. when we talk about high blood pressure, diabetes, and you coming from Mississippi, I know the catfish. I went to Mississippi once, I guess it's probably been about 10 years ago, and I was at a family function, and they had catfish. And I'd never seen this before, and it was like amazing and astonishing to me because I'm from the city. But they had this big black kettle, and they filled it up with grease, and they dropped the catfish in there, and they said when it goes down and comes back up to the top, it's done. And I'm like, I was in amazement. But coming from the South and the diet, is that a big transition from you now that you know that health is also tied to diet?
Absolutely.
The way you eat.
I think we all are in transition, and I think sadly it's only until we get older that we probably stop and really think about what we're doing. But it's always good to start early in a family, and traditions, yes, are still there. Families tend to want to do the traditional cooking, and
fried
I think
chicken, catfish, peach cobbler.
But it takes that one person in that family that says, "Hey, instead of, okay, if you're going to do the fried, please at least do the baked and the broiled. Give us the options." And so I think some families do try to do that, and some people try to do moderation where they're not consuming all the fried foods all the time, high fat, high fried food. So it's a learning process, and it's small steps.
So do you feel your magazine has gathered traction? Like maybe you start printing 5, now you're printing 5,000.
I'd say over our 17 years, we've definitely printed over 1 million copies by now.
Really?
With our reach in the community. I actually have families outside of Kansas City that order subscriptions for our publication, and we're certainly online. The magazine is available in the digital format on our website at kcourhealthmatters.com. So along with print, we have the digital versions available.
Okay. You're watching One-on-One with Swope Health. I'm your host, Eric Wesson. I'm joined today by Ms. Ruth Ramsey. She is the publisher of Our Health Matters, and you can pick it up where? CVS?
You can pick it up at CVS Pharmacy, local community centers, and a number of churches around Kansas City. Okay.
That's good distribution network. Now, you got a special issue that's coming out in November. Tell us about that.
Right. I'm really excited, and I guess I'm a little biased because I have 2 sons, and I love my I can't call them boys anymore, but they're my boys. They'll always be my boys.
Right.
But I've always had a warm place in my heart for African-American males and young men, wanting to see them succeed. We know we live in a society, and we know the stories that are out there about the disparities and many of the challenges that black men face, and black boys as well. And it's always surprised me, and I've heard this over and over, and I think I need to just look into it a little deeper about when our young boys in school reach the 4th grade level. I keep hearing this, and it keeps coming back in the conversation around things that I'm encountering. But I thought, why is that actually on record that an African-American young boy in school, when he reaches the 4th grade, something happens? What happens to that kid at the 4th grade level? But then we know that society, again, because of racism and prejudices and things that limit access to various growth opportunities for black males, whether it be education, whether it's in receiving the proper health care and the ability to access that health care, employment, where they live, where they can afford to live. So our special edition called Black Men Speak, Health, Strength, and Hope. As I thought about, okay, what am I going to title this or focus on, each of those words means something. black men and boys, certainly, health, we're going to look at what are some of the health disparities and what are some of the areas within a black man's health that he needs to have more health literacy around.
Mm-hmm.
The strength aspect of the conversation will be dealt with a discussion around how have you come as far as you've come? What are some of the struggles you've encountered? And how have you overcome them? And if you're still in that struggle, what do you need to overcome it? You know, what are some of the resources within your community that if you had access to it could really help you to excel or overcome some of the challenges that you're facing?
Mm-hmm.
And then the hope aspect is hearing the voice of black men. We're going to profile numerous black men and boys.
Mm-hmm.
The youngest will be 16 years old, all the way up, to seniors. And we're going to profile their stories in our publication. And so we've asked them to share about your health, share about your challenges. What do you want the community to know and understand about you? How do you want society to look at you? What do you think society thinks of you? My first interview recently with a 16-year-old, when we asked him the question of how do you think society looks at you, or what do you think society thinks about you? Now, keep in mind, this is a 16-year-old. He's in the 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And he very clearly articulated without stumbling. He says, they think we're criminals.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it, he didn't think about it. He didn't say, well, let me think. He said, I feel like they think we're all criminals.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, and that really just kind of hurt me to my heart. I thought, here's a 16-year-old, good kid in school, but that's what he thought or felt he might be perceived as a criminal. And that he mentioned one incident that happened at school. Something happened, an encounter with the teacher, and he said the teacher made him angry because of something the teacher said. And he says, I thought about it, and he said, I really wanted to hit him. He said, but I thought about it, and I didn't, because if I did, then I would be the one
Mm-hmm.
who would be wrong, and I would get put out of school, but the teacher wouldn't. And so, again, a 16-year-old we're interviewing, they have something to say and things that we may not even know that they feel,
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to share that in our publication. We're going to have subject matter experts with various sections of the book that deal with health, education, economic development, employment, social justice, public safety, and government. And so each of those individuals will talk about what is it that their field or industry is doing now, or what they could do better for black men and boys.
And you bring up so many valid points that people don't really think about. When I started my career journey, I wanted to be an elementary school teacher, and I wanted to teach 3rd and 4th grade because, like you say, something happens to black boys when they get into the 4th grade. And then when they get into the 5th grade, and in my study and research, it led me to believe that by the time they get to the 6th grade, they're just hanging around long enough to drop out of school. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to do something to change that pattern. Mm-hmm. So I was in my Save the World mentality, and who was very instrumental in getting me motivated down that path was Dwayne Crumpton.
Oh, really?
And I taught with him at KCMC Head Start for a while. I was one of the classroom instructors, and then went on into teaching elementary school. But it wasn't so much the kids that were the issue. It was the parents. Parents was like, I got cussed out one time too many. But you bring up those interesting points, and the image of black males in our society, and being a part of that, and the media, and writing for the call. I'm charged with the responsibility of changing the perspective and broadening the conversation. And it's a challenge. It really is. It's a challenge being able to see it and have people have a different perspective of black people.
Sure.
And especially black men. And, you know, the point that he brings up, they think we're all criminals. And when you talk about him being going to school and being articulate, unfortunately, and I hope this doesn't come out right, he might not be the rule but the exception. Because if you talk to a lot of our young black kids, they get through with a conversation with them and you scratch your head like, what in the world were they talking about? Because their view and perception is so different. So the categories that you broke down, you're going to have people in each one of those categories that are just experienced or experts in these areas.
Well, pretty much experts in the field of those particular areas of education, as I mentioned. One I'd love to share right now is that Dr. Michael Weaver is going to, he's contributing the article for health education. He started a nonprofit. He's a medical doctor, retired medical doctor of 30 plus years with St. Luke's. And so he has started a nonprofit with the purpose of helping underserved, underrepresented minority medical students who are matriculating through medical school. He wants to help as well to fill the pipeline of more black doctors and minority doctors in the medical field. And so he's sharing, for instance, his point of view and with the community why it's important to have more black doctors.
That's interesting. Very interesting. And so this is coming out in November?
This is a November special edition, yes.
Okay, so is it going to be like real thick, or is it going to be the whole month of November?
Well, you know, it's really interesting.
Like
because,
every week we have a different issue.
I guess I was a little naive. I thought it would be as easy as what I normally do with my other editions, but it has grown into what I believe will become something annually produced, because there's not enough time to put as many people as I'd love to. And I think this inaugural edition it'll set a precedent for our community to realize we need to look at and support our community of black men and boys, and that we need to pay attention to what they're saying. We need to understand what they need. We need to make it available to them. There may need to be policy changes. There may need to be a number of things where those who have all these organizations come together and say, what can we do to make sure we're not neglecting this segment of our community?
And you know, and there are more to black men, black youth, black boys than homicide statistics.
Absolutely.
We're always at the top of the newscast when it comes to those, but in our everyday successful young black people, you know, and as we wrap up, and I've been writing for the Call for 20 years as of August the 24th.
Congratulations.
And one of our issues that we got more return newspapers on was our valedictorian and classroom kids' graduation. And the interesting thing about it was that it was always so positive. Here you had these black kids, they had goals and objectives. They wanted to be lawyers, they wanted to be doctors, engineers, and we highlighted that in one issue of the newspaper every year, and that was our least selling issue.
Really?
Out of all the issues that we do throughout the year, that was our least selling issue. And so eventually we phased it out because, you know, after 20 years and nobody's caught on yet, they probably aren't going to catch on. So I just find it interesting. But we always have to do something to change the image of black people. And that's why we have the black media.
Absolutely.
To give a different perspective other than what mainstream says.
I'd like to add, if I could, just before we close, I reached out to Jaron Raven here at Swope Health.
Great guy.
As I was beginning to put the plan together, I thought, I really would love to have and need and want to have this project Black men led.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, who in the community can I reach out to that might think this is a great idea?
Mm-hmm.
And then my first thought was, well, Jaron Raven, because he's in health. He's the CEO of a health facility. And so Jaron doesn't know much about me, or, I'm calling up and say, hey, can I meet with you? I've got this project idea. Wonder if you would listen and if you would, in fact, participate. And within a few minutes of really sharing with him the idea, the concept, he got it.
Mm-hmm.
He says, oh, Ms. Ramsey, yes. Well, of course, I'd love to be a part of this. So I just want to thank him, because a lot of times when you're trying to do something, you really need to know your community supports you and that
Right.
there is someone out there that will support you.
Right. And, when they reached out to me to do this podcast, I got a glimpse of what this could be, and boom, here we are.
It's a beautiful thing. I think
is.
It's wonderful. I commend you guys for this.
It is, and I'm honored to be a part of it. One more thing, come on.
One more thing.
Where can they get it at? Where can they get the magazine?
Our Health Matters online, ourhealthmatters.com. You can download digital editions. You can pick it up in the community at as many as 45 to 50 CVS pharmacy stores, community centers, and local churches around the community. And if anyone needs to know or call me, I can be reached at 816-361-6400. But the other thing I wanted to mention is there's a congresswoman in Florida, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson.
Know her well.
She and several other colleagues, more than 2 years ago, decided that they wanted to put together a commission on to study the social status of Black men and boys. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to say that commission is up and running. It's a 19-member commission. Board of members belong to that, and they're going to be studying the needs of Black men and boys around the country. And I've reached out to her to ask her to come to Kansas City.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully she could come. I mean, we don't know yet, but we asked her to come.
Yeah, and her and Cleaver are pretty cool, so that shouldn't be any problem. Ruth Ramsey, Our Health Matters, thanks so much for joining us. And thank you, the greatest listening audience in the world, for joining us. Till next week, remember, tough times don't last, tough people do. Until next week, peace.